Welcome to Victory News. It's Thursday, October the 17th, 2024. I'm Greg Stevens, along with Mike Garofalo, Fiora Hernandez, and Tim Fox, and these are the stories we're watching for you today. Justice Department says it will oversee voting in Portage County, Ohio. Is that a good thing? We'll talk with author and conservative commentator Ed Rush all about that. And Fulton County, Georgia, District Attorney Fani Willis, well, she's not giving up on 6 of her original criminal counts against former President Trump. Ahead, we'll talk with U.S. Senate candidate from Arizona, Kari Lake, about this and more. But first, let's go to Fiora Hernandez with our headlines. Fiora.
Thank you, Greg. Reports out of Israel this morning appear to confirm that Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas and the man behind the October 7th terrorist attack that killed more than 1,200 Israelis, is dead. The terrorist leader is believed to be one of 3 members of Hamas reportedly killed by an IDF tank blast into a building in the Gaza Strip city of Rafah. Shortly after the news broke of the likely killing, the Israeli defense minister posted a Bible verse, Leviticus 26:7. Quote, "And ye shall chase your enemies, and they shall fall before you by the sword." The IDF has reported no hostages were hurt during the operation. Sinwar is said to have often surrounded himself with some of the remaining hostages to keep from being killed. Sinwar has been the leader of Hamas in Gaza since February 2017. The U.S. military struck Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen Wednesday night. According to the Defense Department, B-2 stealth bombers took part in the attack. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin reportedly said in a statement that the strikes were ordered by Joe Biden to degrade the Houthis' ability to target commercial and military ships in the Red Sea. They reportedly have hardened underground weapons to storage locations. The B-2 is the only U.S. military plane that can carry 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. Mike?
Fiora, one Border Patrol agent claims he and others will leave in droves if Kamala Harris wins the White House in November. That is what an agent who is not even of retirement age told the New York Post this week, saying, "I'm not doing this again. 4 years of hell." With another saying, lots of guys who can retire will go. If Trump wins, they'll stay. That agent even added he believes more seasoned veteran agents will use their skills to get other jobs. A report last May revealed U.S. Customs and Border Protection had lost nearly a quarter of its agents since 2020. The Post Millennial reports that suicide is also on the rise, with CBP agents. That surge led to the agency hiring a suicidologist to combat the problem. Another CBP agent told the New York Post this: "Under this administration, they've done everything they could to make our jobs as inefficient as possible. When you're watching criminals come in and get released, it sucks." Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris sat down on Wednesday for a 26-minute-long one-on-one interview with Fox News' Bret Baier. With more than a third of the interview focusing on illegal immigrants and immigration, here is some of that give and take.
How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration, because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you
now,
just a number? Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Bret, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a
an
rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration...
Bret Baier never got a number out of her. The vice president responded by talking about an immigration bill.
It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the...
Yes, ma'am. May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate, and they didn't bring up that bill.
I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
The 6 Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss.
During that time, you said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration, even before.
And this exchange also stood out.
More than 70% of people
exhausted.
tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
Harris went on to attack Donald Trump and point out some Republicans who no longer support him support her. The vice president was also asked when she first saw Joe Biden's mental faculties start to fail him. Once again, she never gave a straightforward answer, while going on to say Joe Biden is not on the ballot. Fior.
Mike, Fox News host Harris Faulkner held a women's town hall with Donald Trump in Georgia on Wednesday, where early voting has also started.
How do you plan on addressing the transgender issue in women's sports? I have 9 grandchildren, 6 of them female, all playing sports, and we are very concerned for their safety, not just on the field and the courts, but in their locker rooms as well.
Right. It's such an easy question, and everybody in the room, and you know that answer, we're not going to let it happen. You look, just yesterday, they had a volleyball match. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Where a person that transitioned, okay? We have to be very careful because this can terminate your political career if you say it's slightly off, all right? But transitioned from man to female and was on a volleyball. And I saw the slam. It was a slam. I never saw a ball hit so hard.
How do you stop it? Do you go to the sports leagues? Do you go to the Olympic
You just ban it. The president bans it. You just don't let it happen.
Among other topics covered, the economy, the high cost of raising a child in today's world, and the border crisis. The former president also said if he wins on November 5th, he would use his executive authority to end all sanctuary cities in the United States. And Donald Trump had another public appearance on Wednesday, this one on Univision with Undecided Latinos. The first question was about the economy.
What are you planning to change to improve the economy of this country?
Now we have a lousy economy, primarily because of inflation. So we're going to get rid of the inflation. We're going to drill, baby, drill. I'm going to get your energy costs down by 50%, 50% over the course of 12 months, which will be easy to do.
Longtime farmer Jorge Velasquez asked about the possible deportation of non-citizens who pick crops.
If you deport to these people, who would do that job, and what price would we pay for food?
We have to have a lot of people come into our country. We just want them to come in legally through a system, because they've released hundreds of thousands of people that are murderers, drug dealers, terrorists. They're coming in totally, nobody knows who they are, where they come from. And the people that are most against it are the Hispanic people. They are totally against it, what's happened.
The former president was also asked about the $35 trillion national debt, the January 6th overrunning of the U.S. Capitol, and the ongoing situation with Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio. Greg?
The Justice Department announced Tuesday that it will oversee voting in Portage County, Ohio, after the sheriff was accused of intimidating Vice President Kamala Harris supporters. Bruce Zukowski posted on social media last month that the addresses of all residents with Harris Walls signs in their yard should be written down so illegal immigrants could be sent to live with them. The sheriff said since the post was a little misinterpreted, the county Election Board voted to remove the Sheriff's Department from security duty for early in-person voting. And the DOJ announced it would monitor federal compliance with voting laws for early and in-person Election Day voting. Sheriff Zukowski told the Associated Press the DOJ monitoring voting locations was not unique to Portage County, and it was a normal practice by the Department of Justice. So let's talk with decorated Marine Corps fighter pilot, corporate advisor, best-selling author Ed Rush. Welcome to Victory News, sir.
What's up, Greg? Good to be back. Interesting day in the news, so much fun watching this.
Very interesting. Let's start with that Ohio sheriff and his sarcastic post. He was joking around about the note he was going to send to people with Harris 24 signs so they could be sent illegal immigrants that the administration let in. The Ohio director of the ACLU interpreted that post this way, said this: the threat of governmental action to punish them for their expressed political beliefs caused them to take their signs down in fear. So is the DOJ coming in monitoring voting in the sheriff's county? Is that an overreaction, or are we just too sensitive? We can't take a joke anymore?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. So first of all, you probably shouldn't be sharing that joke if you are the sheriff. In the times we're in right now, people are very sensitive. But it's also an interesting just civics case study. You have federal, state, local legislators that make laws, but sheriffs enforce the laws. And as we saw, for example, here in California, in Orange County, during the mask mandates, the Orange County sheriff just refused to enforce those laws, and laws become completely powerless if the sheriff doesn't enforce them. So the sheriffs have a lot more power. I spent last week with the local sheriff, one of the big parishes in Louisiana. The sheriffs have more influence and power than you actually think. But yeah, I think this obviously was a joke on his part that went off the wrong way.
Sheriffs are elected rather than like a police chief. So that's to your point, what you're saying. A bipartisan panel of former senior law enforcement and government officials condemned the Secret Service handling of former President Trump's rally in Butler, PA, stating the agency needed, quote, fundamental changes to be effective. They wrote to Secretary Mayorkas, quote, the Secret Service as an agency requires fundamental reform to carry out its mission. Without that reform, the independent review panel believes another Butler can and will happen again. Ed, the report calls for a complete overhaul of the Secret Service and their leadership. Will that get the needle moving if they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I hope they do. I mean, here's the thing. When I was flying F-18s, we used to have a book called NATOPS. It was all of our emergency procedures. And the joke was that NATOPS was written in blood. Literally every emergency procedure was there because something happened where some pilot got killed. I literally witnessed the out-of-control flight procedure in the F-18 get changed because my roommate lost an airplane doing the procedure exactly the way that it was. The point here is when change is necessary, sometimes it actually takes a violent act for that to change. And God help us. I hope that no one ever gets killed because the Secret Service is so dysfunctional right now. Hopefully, simply Butler will be enough to open the eyes of what needs to change in this organization, which is clearly broken.
Right. Now, U.S. vet, political commentator Rob Smith, he tries to explain to Chris Cuomo why black male voters are moving away from Kamala Harris. Here he is.
But what black men are saying is you can't bully us, denigrate us, shame us into supporting this woman who may not align with what we agree with. And by the way, illegal immigration is also an issue for black Americans and all Americans.
Interesting you mentioned illegal immigration. You saw the debate. Smith calls out Kamala Harris's 5-point proposal to black men she just offered. Ed, let me ask you this. If Trump offered black men free money and legalized weed 3 weeks before the election like Harris did, would the media reaction be the same?
The amazing thing is that they're not buying it. The voters aren't buying it. I said 4 months ago, right here on Victory News, that the story of this election would actually be the Hispanic vote. I'd like to edit that and say it's both the Latino vote and also the black vote. Right now, the polls are trending significantly towards Donald Trump's favor. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won 92% of the black vote. Right now, they're polling at about 78%. And among men, it's more like about 56 to 50%. This is a massive swing. And as you've seen on media after media, it shows up on CNN and even on NBC last night. Black men are tired of being talked down to and used as a voter bloc without receiving any of the benefits from their vote. And they're moving. A mass exodus is underway. And it's fascinating to see this happen, moving not necessarily towards the Republican Party, but at least towards Donald Trump.
All right. Thank you so much, Ed. We'll come back to you in just a moment on that. Mike?
Greg, federal health authorities are pushing a layered mitigation strategy for COVID-19 as vaccine effectiveness is said to diminish within months, potentially increasing the risk of infection. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention continues to recommend vaccination, masks, and social distancing, despite little evidence that even the highest quality masks provide meaningful protection. Recent studies and reports, such as one from the Cleveland Clinic, have raised concerns about long-term heart risks following COVID infections. The clinic study, funded by the National Institutes of Health, claimed that COVID-19 doubled the long-term risk of heart attacks, strokes, and death. However, the study focused on unvaccinated patients from the early pandemic and downplayed data showing that non-hospitalized COVID patients had similar heart risks to non-infected individuals. Critics argue the study selectively presented data to emphasize heart risks from COVID while ignoring risks associated with vaccines. The value of Trump Media, the parent company of Truth Social, has risen significantly in recent weeks, adding about $2 billion to Donald Trump's share of the company, despite a brief 10% rise in stock price on Tuesday that later dropped back down by about the same amount. Trump's 115 million shares are now valued at over $3 billion, according to a report from the New York Times. This is what the former president said about his shares and the company about a month ago.
But a lot of people think that I'll sell my shares. You know, they're worth billions of dollars, but I don't want to sell my shares. I'm not going to sell my shares. I don't need money. And it is for me, it's a great voice. It's a great voice.
The company went public in March. Tim.
Mike, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton secured a significant win Wednesday as the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals granted a full stay on the state's paid vote harvesting ban. According to the Texas scorecard, last month, District Court Judge Javier Rodriguez blocked the ban from being enforced. Paxton immediately appealed that ban. Judge James Ho wrote in his ruling the district court entered an injunction holding a law unconstitutional that had been on the books for 3 years. He criticized the lower court waiting until the eve of the election. Paxton said this about the decision: "We fought hard to ensure that the Texas law protecting the ballot box will be in full force and effect this election season. I will continue to do everything in my power to protect the integrity of the political process." Texas lawmakers passed the ban on paid vote harvesting in 2021. Fior?
Tim, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis asked a Georgia appeals court on Thursday to restore 6 of her original criminal counts against former President Trump and his co-defendants in her 2020 election case. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reports Willis filed a brief to the Georgia Court of Appeals requesting it overturn Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee's decision to dismiss charges against Donald Trump and allies. McAfee dismissed those 6 charges last month, saying Willis failed to allege sufficient detail. McAfee also dismissed 2 additional criminal counts against Trump in September, saying Georgia prosecutors had no authority to bring the charges of filing false documents in federal court. The Trump defense counsel in the case, Steve Sadow, told Fox News, quote, "The trial court's dismissal order properly decided that the state failed to sufficiently plead the allegations in the dismissed counts under Georgia law," end quote. Mike?
Fior, the integrity of voter rolls in the state of Rhode Island is under question. According to the Federalist, Rhode Island works with a multi-state left-leaning voter roll management system called ERIC, which reportedly focuses on adding eligible voters without checking for citizenship upon registration. Republican Congressman Pat Fallon of Texas talked to Fox News earlier this month about the importance of election integrity.
It is a major problem. We do need a solution, considering that the last election was decided by about 80,000 votes out of well over 100 million cast. There's nothing more sacrosanct in a republic than to make sure you have secure, honest, transparent, and open elections.
In respect to Rhode Island, the state acknowledges it is a felony to register to vote as a non-citizen, while at the same time maintaining it is not legal to ask for proof of citizenship status upon registration. And joining us now is former television journalist and now the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate from the great state of Arizona, Kari Lake. Kari, you and your opponent, Ruben Gallego, have a wide separation on people of faith and their place in the fabric of this nation. Tell us how you differ.
Oh my gosh, night and day on every issue, but let's talk about faith. And, you know, Ruben Gallego, my opponent, just earned an award from the Transgender Advocacy Group. You know, this is a guy who's been pushing the transgender ideology in our schools. He just signed a letter saying he didn't want military our military to get their raises unless they pay for transgender sex change surgeries as well. And look at what he did during COVID. He voted and pushed for churches to be forced to shut down, but allowed for strip joints and bars and cannabis sales to continue, but churches had to be shut down. So when it comes to that and the First Amendment, my goodness, the censorship, he doesn't respect the First Amendment, which we know is where we get our ability to practice our faith here in this country and our God-given rights. So we differ widely on many issues, from the border to I want a secure border, I want to fully fund our police. He's voted to defund the police.
You know, Carrie, last night, Kamala Harris appeared on Fox News for an unedited interview with no teleprompter. Near the end, she unloaded some charges on Donald Trump. Let's play a clip, and I'd like you to respond afterwards.
And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy.
So, Carrie, Kamala Harris claimed Donald Trump plans to use the military against Americans, going after peaceful protesters and locking up his opponents. She also laid the southern border crisis on Donald Trump. Tell me your reaction to those comments.
Sometimes when I listen to her, I feel like I'm on planet crazy. I mean, this is exactly what this administration, the current administration, has done. They've weaponized our own government against the people. And no one has been more victimized by that than President Donald Trump. I mean, we've seen these bogus indictments and convictions, and the DOJ coming after him, raiding his home. This is absurd, what I'm hearing. And this administration is pushing against our First Amendment rights. They want to censor us. This is a woman who wants to take away our Second Amendment rights and wants to do mandatory gun buybacks. This is absurd. She needs to look in the mirror, because she's actually talking about herself when she says what she just said.
Now, recently you participated in a debate for the Arizona Senate race with Ruben Gallego. What were you able to reveal about your opponent to voters during that debate?
Well, I wish I would have had 3 hours, to be honest. There's so much of his voting record. He's voted with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden 100% of the time. He's the most radical leftist in the House of Representatives that nobody had ever heard of. So now he's trying to do an extreme makeover and act like he's moderate. You know, he's lied about his past, said he grew up on the south side of Chicago, sleeping on the floor, and that his dad left him when he was 11. That's not even true. He actually grew up in a very upper-class neighborhood near Chicago called Evergreen Park. He didn't tell us that his dad was a convicted felon Mexican drug trafficker. And that matters, because he's voted every step of the way to open up the borders in our country and empower the cartels to funnel drugs into our country and destroy the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. He's lied about every portion of his background, and the media has refused to cover it. It's just unbelievable. He's really a Manchurian candidate. And we need to get more information about his past, the truth about Ruben Gallego out, including the fact that he walked out on his wife when she was 9 months pregnant, served her divorce papers a few days before Christmas, and ran off with a D.C. lobbyist, who now he's pushing all of that lobbyist legislation through Congress.
All right. Now, Joe Biden announced a new $425 million military aid package, Carrie, for Ukraine, as well as a $4.7 billion more in student loan handouts, bringing the total to $175 billion for 4.8 million student loan borrowers. How can this kind of spending continue while our own citizens suffer from natural disasters and issues like inflation and crime?
It's such a slap in the face to Americans. They really must loathe the American citizen to leave us this vulnerable with an open border, to pour more money into a war in Ukraine. This is why I'm so excited to win this seat and go bring some common sense to Washington, D.C. And this is why, frankly, the people of Arizona need to get out and vote early. We have election season. Let's vote early. Make sure you cast your ballot for President Trump. We're going to stop the wars. We're going to bring back security on our streets. We're going to bring back a secure southern border and revive our economy. Vote President Trump in Arizona and U.S. Senate Carrie Lake. And I really appreciate your time today, allowing me on.
Carrie Lake, thank you for joining us today during a busy home stretch for your campaign. Take care.
Thanks.
Tim.
Most Jewish Americans agree that former President Donald Trump is on the side of Israel. Will that translate into more votes for him from the Jewish community? According to Breitbart News, a new poll shows that may not be the case. A poll conducted for the Forward by Chip 50 found 62% of Jews still intend to vote for Kamala Harris. In fact, when asked who they thought would handle the Israel-Hamas war better, respondents said Harris would by 54 to 36% margin. Harris's 62% support among Jewish voters is below the 77% one poll showed Joe Biden received in 2020. The same poll found in 2016 Hillary Clinton received 70% of the Jewish vote. The poll was conducted online from August 30th through October 8th with a margin of error of plus or minus 3.3%. Greg?
All right, before we go, let's talk with Victory News contributor Ed Rush one more time. Ed, big news is 306,000 early voters turned out the first 2 days in Georgia versus 107,000 in 2020. Now, this is the land of Jim Crow 2.0, according to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Your thoughts on that number?
I mean, Georgia is really setting the example and, frankly, the lodestar for what's happening in this election. You saw the clips from Kamala Harris's interview with Bret Baier on Fox News. There's a reason why they took Kamala Harris out of witness protection, where she wasn't doing any interviews at all, and actually put her on the main stage right there. And it's because their internal numbers are awful. And right now, Georgia's showing a significant trend right now towards the Republican Party and Donald Trump. If you are a voter right now, don't let that get you complacent. Do what Carrie Lake just said to do. Get out and vote early.
Okay, we just got under a minute here. Let me follow up then on what you were just saying. Did the interview last night move the needle either direction, in your opinion? What were your thoughts about it?
I mean, interesting. So first of all, it was fascinating to hear her actually have to answer questions impromptu without a teleprompter, actually answering questions. And it was an unbelievable bloodbath. The numbers right now, for example, North Carolina right now, +5 Trump, Pennsylvania showing anywhere from +1 to +3 Trump, Virginia +1 to +3, even Nevada and Arizona. Right now, the only state he's not trending in is Wisconsin. That's the reason why they forced her into the public square. I don't know, Greg, how many undecided voters there are. I will tell you, for an undecided voter, that interview last night was a train wreck, and I think you'll see the polls continuing to trend in Donald Trump's direction.
All right, Ed Rush, thank you so much. Find out more about Ed by visiting godtalks.com. It's great to see you and have you with us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, phone number on the bottom of the screen is for you. This is where we invite you to call, and a licensed, trained prayer minister will pray with you. 877-281-6297. Maybe it's about something in your life personally, your family, your workplace, the election itself, things that are troubling in the news. 877-281-6297. They know what they're doing, and they're going to pray with you. I'll bring Tim Fox in. Tim, we're just a few days away now from Election Day. Early voting's already started. Would you lead us in prayer as we go today?
Yeah, Father, I pray for anyone out there in our audience that may be troubled. Lord, your word says, let not your heart be troubled, Father. So I thank you that anyone who's having a troubling heart, Lord, that they turn to you, Father God. And Lord, all those things that Greg mentioned before, he mentioned the prayer line, anyone that's believing for anything or having trouble with anything, we thank you that you are more than enough to meet those needs. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Our thanks to Ed Rush, Carrie Lake, and especially you. Thanks for being part of Victory News. You are part of Victory News. We're back at 5 Eastern, 4 Central with the Deputy Managing Editor of the Western Journal, Josh Manning. Make sure that you are here as well. The world reports the problem. Victory Channel is the one that brings the answer. Whatever is born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that's overcome the world, our faith. That's 1 John chapter 5, verse 4. So stay in faith. God bless you. And we'll look for you this evening at 5 Eastern. Bye for now.